everyone, and welcome to Publish Me, Punish Me, a comedy series that's examining deal practices within the games industry with me, Ava Carr, founder and CEO at Glitch.
And me, Son M, the studio director of Perfect Garbage. Every episode we dive into indie publishers, crowdfunding, equity deals, and more.
Whether it's the good, the bad, or just plain yikes, we're going to tackle it all. If you're interested in discussions about the design and business of video games, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel below.
And we're going to tackle you right now with diversity and inclusion funds. What are those? When he first pronounced it to me as D&I, I thought it was like, like do not resuscitate, DNR.
Yeah.
Do not inclusive.
Do not inclusive.
So actually, Ava, what are D&I funds? What do they stand for? What do they mean?
So D&I funds are a separate pool of funding that is oftentimes given to creators with different backgrounds. So for example, Black and brown folks, or, queer folks, or whatever that is. It is a separate pool of funding that is reserved specifically for people who are from marginalized communities for their games. I have seen it in the form of publishing deals. I've seen it in the form of grants. The Galaxy Fund grants are that as well. I've seen it in many different forms, but, the publishing ones are relatively new. I'd say they've been around for only a couple of years, maybe like 3 or 4 at most. There are equity deals that are relatively new. I've seen it from many different types of early stage angel investors all the way to, really just early stage companies in general.
And these funds are usually separate. They tend to be smaller than a publishing deal or a platform deal. We'll talk about it more when I talk about my deal, but sometimes you got to mix and match them.
And how do y'all feel about D&I funds as a whole?
You want to go first? You're really making a stink face.
You're making a face.
You're making a...
That's how I feel about them. I think that's just,
can
I just give the
cute,
face?
Like,
can I have a face?
Yeah, you're like adorable, but mad.
Yeah. Like you
I'm
full
like
on like
Kirby.
I thought I have them, but you like really have them,
I am not a huge fan of them personally. I'm not a huge fan of them for a couple of reasons. One, I am not a fan of the fact that you're right, Son. The majority of D&I funds, or the majority of diversity funds in general, do tend to have since they are a separate pool, it is a smaller portion of a larger pool of funding. So for example, if they have $100 million that they are spending, right, on games that they want either in their portfolio or in their catalog or whatever that is, maybe, 10 million will get put into a D&I fund, or maybe like 20 million will get put in a D&I fund. We'll never know the percentage, but we do know that it is a smaller percentage oftentimes based off of the deal sizes, right? And so I find that it is okay that it exists, but I'm not a fan of this check sizes that typically come out of them, right? So that's where my opinion lies. How about you, Son?
First of all, I want to preface that I like D&I funds. Fundamentally, I like that there's any money for anybody ever. So I'm very pro all forms of deals most of the time. I'm like, if they exist, I want them. I sometimes find them as an excuse not to give someone a publishing deal or a platform deal. So I don't want to take a risk on this studio, but I like that they are diverse and that they're bringing some brown people to the mix. So I'm going to give them a D&I fund instead. And it's smaller, but it's safer. And I'm doing my part. And that's how sometimes I feel about D&I funds. I love them. Like, I will take them 100%. And I actually love the folks I've ever worked with previously for D&I funds. But I oftentimes find them as sometimes trying to overshadow doing the work of diversifying the actual industry. Because they are considered separate, like they're a completely separate aspect of publishing. They're smaller, and I have my deal. We'll talk about this a little bit, but I think that you have to be a little scrappier if you're going to survive on D&I funds, as opposed to getting a publishing deal or a platform deal. And I think that that's tough in its own way.
I'm going to add on to that, which is the perception, right? The answer is the perception from the person who is giving funding and financing. The goal oftentimes is that someone is looking to make money, someone is looking to generate revenue, and they see that there's a market and they see potential in either the team, the game, or hopefully both. I find that D&I funds exist in a space where it is charity. And I often find that, although that is cool, appreciate any additional funding that there is, seeing a separate pool of money as charity comes with its own problems, right? So if you see, for example, someone who is queer, or if you see someone, for example, who is brown, let's direct them, specifically to that fund. And it is separate and it is different and the terms are different over there. I find that logic and that line of thinking incredibly problematic.
We agree. I think they go hand in hand. It's the implication that you're not good enough for the platform or publishing deal, but you are good enough to get some money on the side. And maybe you could do something with that. And it's a bummer. Like, again, I never want to turn down money. I think it's very, very important. I'm actually really happy these funds exist because I think that they do help sustain creators who are in tough spots, who might not be able to get access to deals as easily. These funds do great things, but you're right. There is an inherent cost to the stigma of what these funds mean, and how you feel taking them and how they feel giving them. If anything, I really feel like they should count as grants way more than anything. Like, if they're going to give me a D&I fund, they have to be grant-like. You should not be paying them back if they're going to paint it like that anyway. So it's even spicier when a D&I fund is asking for recoup.
That's kind of wild that they would ask.
It's called being evil.
So that is how we feel about D&I funds, everybody. Anything else that you'd like to add?
Please keep giving them to me. Fix them, but never turn down money. I'm here all the time.
Just call me.
I'm an Algerian Muslim, queer coded.
Let me get all the words in there. It does affect the perception of the person receiving it that this is what they can compete for, is the small money, and the big money's for the other guys, and we can go and all compete for the small money.
I really think that's it. And this is something I actually really want to get at, and it's another topic, and I might be going on a tangent. It's something that publishing is faced with the term own voices. And it's that the people who are pitching for this stuff, our identities are now on the line to get it. When I'm talking about diversity inclusion funds, I am listing those fucking acronyms. Like, I am Algerian Muslim, first gen, like femme appearing, studio manager. Like, you list all of these things because you have to for these types of funds. You have to show that you're marginalized, and it trickles down into the perception of your studio and the game. And like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I think that we should all be really proud of what we represent and what we mean and what we're trying to develop and things like that. But we are forced to be in a box where you're marginalized devs or you're the rest of the game industry. And I don't like it because it lends itself to, what if you fail too? What if you're not representing yourself? Or what if you're not representing the culture of your background in the best of light? Or you're doing
one human.
Yeah.
You are literally but one human. You do not represent all of, you do not represent all Algerians. I do not represent all Southeast Asian people and Thai people. Like, it's just, that is unrealistic.
I mean, and I've talked about this time and time again in multiple industries, but it does promote the there can only be one mentality too, right? There can only be one big, like, Black woman game dev. There's only one. You can't, if there's others, not real. Or there can only be one Arab dev. There can only be one Arab-led studio. Like, that's a very common concept, and it's actually what causes a lot of difficulty with building community when you're starting or getting your work out there, because it's forcing you to compete specifically with your other devs who might be in similar marginalized background positions. Like, you have to compete with them because you're not allowed to compete with the rest of the game industry.
there was a question that was posed of how can it be improved? And I think that this was something that perhaps Alana had put in. I am going to not give you that answer and instead say you should pay people to give that answer. If someone is interested in answering the how can it be improved and how can it be better, talk to those communities, consult with them, reach out and pay them for their time. So I'm going to end it there on the how can it be improved if y'all are cool with that.
You can pay me for my time.
Yeah, you could pay me too. So
deal time?
Yeah, it's deal time.
You want to go first or shall I?
I don't really remember. Is yours good? Is yours bad? Tell me. Give me some foreshadowing.
Mine's an optimistic note, but starts pretty rocky.
I would like to go second. You should go first.
So mine is really, really straightforward. There's an indie studio and they're working really hard to finish their game. They did not receive any publishing deals or platform deals after going through a bunch of pitching for a couple of years. So
that's rough.
They knew that they wanted to finish this project. They couldn't crowdfund it, but they didn't have the funds to complete it. And the way they managed to get by was actually by taking multiple D&I funds. And so mine is optimistic in the sense that they went to the major platforms and got D&I funds from the major platforms, as well as a couple of smaller D&I funds provided by conferences. And it's those little funds stacked. They had to stack them is like my big thing. That allowed them to finish the game. Unfortunately, there's a cost, right? So with platforms, you're promising something usually that's delivered on the platform. So now they suddenly had to port a bunch. And so they did take a net loss from all of the porting, but it still let them finish it. And that was a big deal for them, is that they wanted to finish this product. And it might not be like I said, the most perfect game that's been released on all platforms and it's like amazing, but it's their game and they finished it. And that was a big deal. And so publish me or punish me.
Is this their first title?
Yes.
First time running a studio?
Not all of them.
Okay. And with the loss, what kind of loss was it? You mentioned they took a loss. Does that mean that they
were porting without
overworked?
getting paid because they were using the funds from D&I to fund the development? You know what I mean? So usually when you get a D&I fund from a platform, it's expectant that it's mostly regarded for porting. But they needed to finish the product that they were making. So they put a lot of the funds that they got into finishing development, and then they kind of took on the labor of porting it themselves without paying for that type of support.
This is a hard one. And I would initially say publish me. And here's why. So it's the first project or the first game or the first literally anything is by far the hardest thing to do. Most people do it without any support, without any funding, without any financing. And what that really means is people are using what I would call sweat equity, which means that they're using their own time. They are essentially paying themselves nothing, but their time and contributing really their time to get something done. So in this scenario, I would say all things considered, I would go with publish me because of the fact that at the very least, you were paid something to create your game that you have full ownership of. There is no one who is taking a small percentage of your sales. And then you can, for example, work like hell to sell as many copies as you possibly can to be able to continue to do the work. That is what my logic is on this specific deal and what I would consider doing if it were me. So Son, tell me what actually happened.
No, I kind of ended up spoiling it within the thing, is that they got the game out like they did. And I think I was in a very two-mind state of it like you are, where I feel like it's terrible that they had to go that route. But it's still a route and not an end. And I think that's really, really important, is that in the end, those D&I funds let them release a product and let them start building the backlog that they need to continue creating projects. And I have no doubt in my mind that now that they have really shipped a game, getting a deal for their next project, if they want it to, will be easier.
And back to that initial question that we had at the beginning of the show, right? Which is, what is the purpose? How do we feel? Do we like or do we not like D&I funds? Clearly, a lot of people have recognized that this is a gap, right? Like in some capacity, this is something that people need. And so they create, whether it's a publisher or a platform or whatever it is, these D&I funds fill in a gap for folks who are shipping for their first time. And so this experience, exactly what you just said, is essentially designed for, right? Like, that is why these exist. And I think it sucks, but at the same time, it is an option. And is, yeah, right? Like, it sucks, but folks are thankful for it and thankful for the opportunity. And, oh God, I have such complex feelings about being thankful and being grateful for what we receive. And that in of itself is a problem. Yeah. And so I'm really glad that this person was able to do, or this studio and this team of 3 was able to do with the funding that they received. I'm very thankful for the fact that they were able to get their first game out. And I hope that in the future, they will never have to go through anything like this again and undervalue what it is that is their time and their expertise and their experience. But I'm not going to hold my breath. And I, again, am wishing all the best for this team. But God, this is exactly why we talk about D&I funds right now.
Is it common practice to try and stack, like you're saying, like stack a bunch of them on top of each other? And if so, is it ever like frowned upon?
So here's Alana coming in again with a really great question. With a banger question. I'll say that no, it is not frowned upon. Yes, it's actually beneficial for all parties involved, right? Like Son, as someone who is working with you on the equity side of things with PG, great. Like, please go out and get more free and or money that just, yeah, right. Whether it's a grant or whether it's like a smaller D&I fund that doesn't require any sort of like exclusivities, or it doesn't require anything massive from you as a company, and enhances or adds money to the conversation or adds value to your company. Like, yes, stack like hell, because that is a strategy that you can do when you're being given such a small amount compared to that of other pools of funding, right?
Also, a lot of these D&I funds don't ask you to credit them. And I think that's different in the films. So in films and in other industries, you tend to list the funding sources that you've gotten. And in games, we don't often list our funding sources unless it's a deal in which their logo appears before our logo. You know what I mean? In the game. And so,
which is oftentimes publishing.
Exactly. And so you're not oftentimes running into game studios listing, because there's no studio I know that doesn't get funding from multiple sources. It's just that they don't list them. So just know that if you ever see a studio that you like and you're like, how are they, what one fund are they using? Oftentimes it's not just one fund. It's like 3 or 4 being stacked upon.
If you don't show that, then, oh my God, does everyone just think that they just get made like for nothing?
I really do think that's a problem. And I also like to point out that a lot of D&I funds are secret, not intentionally so, but they're just not promoted. You have to know folks or be a part of like communities that know of these funds. And it's because like we don't list them. And why would you? We just talked about how we don't like how it feels like separate funding. So why would you list them as funds that you get? And you know, it's this constant like juggling game you're playing in the game industry.
Apparently we have lots and lots of feelings around D&I funds, and they're very complicated.
All right, your turn. Give me your deal, buddy.
So this person said that we initially pitched to a platform for funding. Oh, another platform deal. We had been talking to them for many years, considered them close colleagues, and they had been eager to chat with us about getting our latest game on their platform, which suggests that this is not their first time. This is not their first rodeo. We finally said, sure, we'll pitch it as we're coming in on our alpha build. They heard our budget, looked a little surprised, and then connected us to another person within the company. We're not sure who this person was, since they were never in any of our initial conversations or formally introduced to us, but that person did make us an offer, one that was 1/10 of our ask. 1/10, everybody.
So if it was $100,000, they gave them $10K kind of thing.
On top of that, there was an ask to do sim shipping, which would have been a nightmare for us since we would have been out of the running to do partnerships with any other platform. So, Son, publish or punish?
Punish.
Explain yourself.
Even knows this, but I have a really strong negative perception of taking money that won't finish something. I think that's a dangerous game that you torture yourself with. Not yourself, but publishers and platforms torture you with by dangling a certain amount of money. And you know that's not enough to finish the game, but you need money. And I've been in that position and it sucks because it's free labor. You're just doing free labor to get it out. And it's a nightmare and you're not happy with it and you're cutting corners and like there's so many things about that. So I don't like the lack of funding. I think that the deal is already off. The sim ship is, I actually don't think sim ships are inherently negative. I agree with the anonymous deal that it's a big tall ask when a game is in that stage and they're not paying well enough. Like if you had told me they were like, we want exclusivity or like we want sim ship and we're going to give you what you ask for, then I'm like, you know what? They're going to finish it for you. So maybe that's a good deal.
Well, see, Son, here's the thing. I actually think that a sim ship is exclusivity without saying exclusivity.
Yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. It's the same implication, especially with how they worded that they would be unable then to do other deals. So they're locked in taking 1/10 of what they need with cutting up almost half the prospects of getting funding elsewhere. It's just a dangerous game. I would return to them actually, because I still don't think working with platforms is inherently, like, I always think it's usually better than most other options. And so to me, I would approach them again after I've secured funding and deals from other places and tell them to work with what I have. So if they want my game to release on that platform, they have to pay me a certain amount and I can dedicate that to doing that as well. No exclusivity, but and it just, so definitely a punish me deal. I really hope they didn't take it. I feel like that's putting baby in a corner.
Real quick, what is sim ship?
If you sign a sim ship deal, that means that you are guaranteeing the person that you are signing this deal with that any console that you are going to ship your game on, you will ship at the same time as this console. So the outcome. The first thing that this team said was, it was insulting. We brought it up to our original contacts, and they said that this was the route that made the most sense for the company. We're pretty sure that we were directed to the Brown People Fund. And needless to say, we didn't sign and got a bigger and also better deal with their competitor.
Dang, good for them. I'm glad they dealt with it, and I'm glad they got a better deal. I've heard many stories where they don't, and that is it. So it's very exciting that they got out and they got a better deal. It sucks that they had this. I definitely feel like it's insulting. It does hurt my feelings too.
Yeah, it hurts my feelings too, right? But feelings have nothing to do with this at the end of the day, because it's a deal. That means that if they were reaching out and saying like, hey, I am interested in what you have to offer, I am interested in your audience, I am interested in your game, that means that there was something there with the game that they wanted on their platform. So if they want something on their platform, they do need to pay for it. And that is something that, again, feelings aside, is business.
I think we learned a lot this episode. We learned that D&I Funds, we are understanding that they exist. We just think that they have a lot of problems with them.
It could be better, but we still love them. Please give us money.
Don't stop. I swear to God.
Very grateful, but would love them to be better.
On that note, thank you, lovely people, for joining us on this episode of Publish Me, Punish Me, where we talked about diversity and inclusivity funds. I hope you learned something and enjoyed the ride with us. We certainly love talking about it. If you have a past deal, maybe you've experienced a fund similar and you want to talk about it, please look at the Google form down below, linked in our description. There you can tell us about your deal anonymously. We don't share names, we're secretive.
And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed the show, and also continue the conversation with us over at discord.gg/hateglitch. And, we'll see you next time.
And many more.
And many more beyond this.
PM beyond.
PM beyond.
Yes.